Good evening. Right, working. How are we doing, people? Right, I'm well aware that there's a football event on this evening. It's probably not going to be the longest one this evening, so I want to kind of get straight into the title here. Just a wee quick overview for anybody that's new that comes across this. I'm just a person who's investigating aspects of reality, overturning some fundamental assumptions and claims that have been made in regards to our reality and who we are and where we came from and all that jazz. There is no strawman attachments here at this platform. I do not represent any cartoonery, any preconceived notions or propaganda ideas of what you think a flat earth is or what you think people like me are. We are honest, skeptical person, people looking to question fundamental assumptions about our reality and the claims that have been made. Sorry, just 2 seconds. Get my wee tea. Thanks.
Aye, with a child.
Aye. Beat it, you beat it. How you doing? You happy?
Right, come on.
I'll eat you.
Let's go. Come on.
I'll eat you.
Come on,
Beat it.
let's go. No, we need to go in. Mum will go and get the milkshake.
I don't want you. Beat it. Leave that one. Leave that one.
Get your one. There, Harvey. There, go get it.
So, aye, if you're new, I just want a wee short kind of intro here. There's so much propaganda surrounding this topic of people questioning mainstream science, some of the claims to our physical existence, our physical reality, and there's a lot of it that is total nonsense. I'm going to make the statement that, as in my investigations, it is an absurdity to think that we live on the exterior of an oblate spheroid, zipping through a void that is a vacuum, and the whole shebang that has been told to us from infancy through into adult life. Okay? Now, the majority of people may never have questioned that, and it seems strange to them, but that's because they have a fundamental belief. It's a form of religion. It's dictating to you a worldview, your place within the world, what you're a part of, where you came from, and etc. So, just a wee short intro. I usually give a wee bit more detail, but I'm not going to bother with that. I'm going to cut straight into what I've put in the title of this. So, I'm going to set it up a wee bit here. Hang on a now. I'm just going to say to Gav to let me know when he's about. Right. So, there's a lot of discussion, and claims being made in regards to things like gravity. What I'm going to address here is direction. So we hear a lot of talk about things fall, objects fall downwards, gravity pulls things towards the centre of the earth. Now, as we've established before, motion dictates that you require some sort of pressure. Motion pull is only a descriptor for one object coming closer to another object. It is not the factor which makes the motion happen. The factor that makes any motion happen is a pressure, something pressing on something else. Okay, so let me just jump right back to the beginning, because too many people talk without addressing again first principles and underlying assumptions about what they're talking about. So what I'm going to postulate to you here is this, right? Now I'm going to take it as a given that people are starting from a void. We're going to call space a void, a vacuum, a nothingness. Has no dimensions to it. There is no direction. Okay? So we're talking about an infinity of nothing. Never-ending nothingness, a void. Okay? Which, if you go to the heliocentric model, is pretty much what they're saying. It has no dimensions to it. Space has no dimension. Okay? And if it is get dimensions to it, they better start letting us know what the actual shape of it is. Right? So if we start from a void, nothing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 scenarios. I'm going to place an organic life form. We'll take a human being. Now, this is just philosophy. We're talking about thought experiments here. But we can deduce through the mechanics of reality to this point. So, if me, being the organic organism, a life form even, if you put me in this void, okay, where is my orientation? Where do I get direction? What am I requiring to bring in to this in order to give me a sense of direction? Now, you need to forget about your sense of direction here in this environment right now. Okay, we're talking about before that. How do we get orientation? How do we get direction? So say you hear people talking about down and up and all this stuff. Well, what do you need to dictate that? So if you've got me in an infinite void, you can't see I'm falling. You can't see I'm going up or I'm going in any direction. You have no reference frame. So I'm just suspended. There is no direction. What do I need to bring in order to give me direction? I have to bring in some other factor. Something would have to come into contact with me to give me a sense of direction. So if I say it comes from my feet and it now contacts me, there has to be an acceleration. Okay? Now that acceleration, that point that it's touching me at, gives me a direction. I now have an orientation because something is moving me. So there I can point and say that's down. Now I have an up because it's straight line contact. Okay? So if you're going to talk about direction with inanimate objects or organic life forms in a void, remember we're starting from the beginning here, you have to bring in factors that would denote direction. So there's no mystical pulley for magic films where the magician goes, ooh, and you somehow float towards them. It's total nonsense. So you need a factor coming into play to give you direction. So I'm suspended in empty space. Something has to come in. Something has to put me into motion. By being in motion, I now have direction. The direction is dictated by the point of pressure that is putting things into motion. So you could put an explosion, something could push me initially. I'm in a frictionless environment, now I've got motion. But as soon as that point of contact leaves me, I'm still in motion. I now have no direction because I'm back to the infinite void with no reference frame. Okay? But if you flattened the top of my head and you had other objects and people on there, I'm now in perpetual motion in a frictionless environment. The things on the top of me have a direction because I am the point of contact that is in motion. An object can have mass in a void, in an emptiness. You can have the mass, but it has no weight. Again, the only way you're getting weight is by something coming into contact with it, pushing against it at whatever speed or acceleration that denotes its weight. Hang on. Let me just come back to this in a wee second. Just bear with me. I started thinking about these things. Again, I'm hearing people and using language and, no overturning assumptions that they're spewing. And the reason I started to think about this was, my experience of being in an elevator, and it triggered the thoughts in me, of what denotes, weight, what gives weight to a mass. So in an accelerator scenario, an elevator scenario, as it initially moves, your weight increases until you reach that uniform speed, and then it will even out again. Same when it drops, you'll have a slight drop in weight until you reach that uniform motion, and then it equilibrates again. Bear with me. So when I've got heliocentrists talking about pulley forces and why do things fall downwards towards the centre of the earth and all this kind of stuff, well, the question has to be asked, where are you getting orientation from in the first place? because in that void you're orientationless. Something has to define direction. Something has to come into contact with something else and push it so that you now have a reference point of direction. So in the same scenario, just wait a wee second here. Sorry, I just need to set this up. What I'm offering up here is my thoughts and where my thoughts take me and what I'm contemplating. And there's questions to be asked, there's discussions to be had there. I'm by no way, shape or form making any claims to anything other than things that I can deduce from mechanical, physical reality. So, where were they? Aye. So, if we take that scenario now, as I say, you either need something at the point, if it's just me, I need something at the point of contact continuing to be there. You know, if it moves away and I'm in a frictionless environment, I'm still going to move perpetually at that rate, okay, but I now don't have an orientation. Does that make sense? Let me see. Never mind density and all these things right now. We have to strip things right back to the fundamentals. So as I say, these people are talking about, motion, direction, but how did they get these things in the first place? What denotes, what gives direction is the question that has to be asked. So again, if you're talking about an infinite vacuum, an emptiness, a void, a nothing, there is no orientation, there's nothing to reference to give any sort of direction. It doesn't have walls, it doesn't have a geometry to it, there is no set direction. The only way something can have direction, it's like if I put the ping pong ball here and let it go, it's just going to fall, right? I put the ping pong ball there and I start swinging my arm around, the ping pong ball is going to stay on the palm of my hand if I continue that rate of motion, right? Now if you're on the ping pong ball, your point of reference of down is now towards the contact point of what came into contact with you. That's your reference, okay? Now you're part of this system. Out with that reference frame and back to the void again. You could be doing ellipses, you could be doing circles, you could be doing anything. It doesn't matter to you though, in that point, that reference frame. Because your reference frame is the point of contact. That's what's causing the initial motion, which gives weight to your mass, which gives you direction. Without it, there is no direction. So when globe believers talking about falling down, there has to be an opposition to that. Down is denoted by some point of contact that is pushing things into motion. Is this making sense? I need feedback, people, because as I say, it's difficult when you're contemplating some of these things to try and, put it out with words visually so that people can understand what it is you're actually saying. Two yeses. Do you understand the significance here? Now we'll get to the globe bullshit. People living upside down. It doesn't work with globes. Now this is the thing about their Big Bang nonsense. They know. They knew they had to have a prime mover. They had to have something that put things into motion. Right? Now again, you're not going to have direction with spinny spheres. You don't have direction, which is why they come up with bullshit about things being pulled to the centre and all this fucking gobbledygook. That doesn't give direction. Imaginary, invisible forces don't give direction to the mechanical aspects of our reality. Yes, but how do you get down? How do you get down? You need something opposing it. You need something straight through it, meeting it, to give it that resistance and putting it into motion so that you now have direction. So you can see Now again, no making any claims, you can see how these people came to these notions of an upward moving earth. Not that I'm making that claim, because we have to look at other factors that could create up and down. Right? But there has to be a source, a point of contact, an initial cause that created the motion. Down from where you started, from a jumping off point downwards direction. No, you're talking about worldly, stuffs here. We have to go right to the beginning. If we were talking about, okay, we're going to create a fucking physical reality, right? Then we've got a void, we've got an emptiness, we've got a nothing. Okay? We take an object, take a physical form, a being, and we stick it in that fucking void. There is no direction. It's not moving anywhere. How would you know it's moving? You've got nothing to reference it. Even if I put something else side by side and you've seen this happening, how do you know what one's in motion? What one's moving? You don't. If I had that being there and I put a plinth just underneath the being, there's still no motion being created. What has to happen is that plinth has to come into contact and start to propel that being. Now the being has the direction because something came to resist it or meet it. I know, we're not talking about creation something for nothing. We're just talking about their claims. We're talking about their nonsensical drivel physics. And what I'm pointing out is the aspects of our reality that is factual, that is the way it works. Motion's denoted by a point of contact, pushing something. And in a void, from the very beginning, you need something that's going to dictate direction. It wouldn't matter where you come in, Faye. That point is always going to be a reference point for what you would call down. Because that's the point of pressure. And you don't get that on spheres spinning. Where's this Rory fucker? No, it's not him, it's not the right same one. I need other people in here to talk to me about this. Let me see. Gav's obviously not there yet. Let me open up. If you want to speak to me about this, you need to email me, the email address above. I've got a few emails there, I'll read them out once I get through some of this. Hopefully Gav will join us shortly. But you're talking about North Nottingham Paranormal Investigators, you're talking about already being in this reality, in this reference frame, right? Remove yourself out of that. So if the ping pong ball is suspended in the vacuum, has no direction, it doesn't matter where I come in, what point of contact. That point of contact, putting it into motion, now dictates where down's going to be. Right? It doesn't matter where you come in for. You have to have the second factor to give direction in the first place. You have to have something in opposition to it, something that meets it. And it's the motion. You have to have something. If you've got a mass, an object of mass in the void, it's got no weight. The only way it's going to have weight or any measure of any weight is when something else comes into contact with it and pushes against it. Now you've got a measure of weight. Now it has a reaction, it has weight. Even the saying, Pete, we can say an infinite void, we'll say it's an infinite ocean. If you're in an infinite ocean, you still don't have direction. There is no up, down, left, right, there's nothing. You're orientationless. You need to bring in another factor in order to denote direction. And again, it doesn't matter where it comes in for, and it has to be in contact, it has to come into contact with it to now put that in motion. But as I say, if that initial contact point now goes, I'll remain in motion in a frictionless environment, and I'll not have orientation anymore. Now, if I identify a point of contact that puts me into motion, and I now encase that reference frame, right? Now I've got a down, an up, a left, a right in every other possible direction by the geometry of what I've now encased that scenario in. But again, outside of that, there's still no orientation. But it doesn't matter for the reference frame in here. Says that could be moving in circles, ellipses, roller coastery, whatever, as long as that constant's maintained. Like a G-force in a car. You get above a certain or a certain velocity and you feel it pushing back, right? That's your reference point for direction. Without it, you don't have any. Nice one, North Nottingham Paranormal Investigators. Remember, we're talking about heliocentrism, the claims that are being made to us, right? Direction, down and all this fucking stuff, down, you want the centre of the sphere bulb. There is no down unless something comes into contact with it, pushes against it, then it's got a reference point for what down is. So, Big Bang, spews out hundreds of shite and it's all spinning. You're not going to have any reference points. It certainly is beyond belief, and this is the thing. It's like people will only go so far and they'll talk about things from without the first principle again. Where are these assumptions coming from? What's this language we're using? What's direction? How do you get direction? That's what people need to ask. How are you getting direction? What denotes, what gives things direction? So as I say, you can see why these people postulated that the Earth would move upwards. Because now that's the reference point, and anything on that platform that's moving upwards now has a reference point of direction, it now has down. Take it away. You've no got direction anymore, it's gone. Something has to come into contact with something else and put it into motion. Then you've got direction from your point of contact. Oh, what's below us? As people get anything to offer in regards to this, are just getting involved in their wee bickers with each other, because I can't be fucked with any of that. I need to continually progress my contemplations and break this shit apart. That's where people's focus should be. Fuck the personalities. Let the personalities go on with it. Focus on what's fucking relevant and what's really important. But we have the ground as a reference. We are not spinning in a void, or at least I'm not. Well, this is what I'm pointing at, Gideon. Here, in this reality, you have a sense of direction. You have an orientation. You know where down is. You know where up is. What gives you that? It's not an imaginary pulling force, is it? It's always the same, German. It's fine if there's aspects of content that people can see as propaganda or misrepresentations or stuff like that, but it just, for me, a lot of it cascades into a never-ending bickering, a battle that's just not going to achieve anything, you know? What is it you're saying, Pete? I'm missing. Are you adding something to this question here that I'm asking? Would anybody like to come in? Tell me how I'm wrong? Can be about anything, Nellis. Right, okay. So down, things accelerating downwards. People are saying these things. What gees them down? You don't have down without this reference point here that we call Earth. So is it the Earth that's coming to meet it? Or is it coming to meet the Earth? Doesn't matter. You have to have that resistance. It's that resistance that gives it the mass, the weight, and gives it the direction. Good Emerald Rider, how's you, mate? People want a link, they need to email me. I think so, Rick, as well, because there has to be, you know, the opposing factor. You know, because I say, you know, even way up, you're not going to have a reference point unless you come into contact with something else. Same way down. There has to be a meeting. Of course, it's relevant to where we are. It's obviously it's not the only thing that's relevant to where we are is the exploration, right? But right now, I'm just talking to some of the underlying assumptions, the fundamentals that people are looking beyond. So I'm hearing people talking about direction downwards. Well, the question I'm asking is, how do you get a direction of downwards? Hello.
Hello.
How you doing, bud?
Well, up and down, you know.
How did you get up?
It's hard to stay positive, you know.
Hi. Hold on, yeah. Hold on.
But I have my my motorbike right now, so it keeps me
sane,
motivated.
Excellent.
Yep.
You should be able to see me now. Aye, that's fixed. You all right, mate? So, yeah, I take it you've heard what I've been talking about here.
Yeah.
Have you get any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of direction, if you want to change the direction, I think you would need some sort of thing to pull off on, if you know what I mean.
Well, it's not about changing direction. In order, if you're in a void or you're starting from the beginning and you have no orientation, there's nothing to reference. Okay, what gives that one object? You know, it could be an inanimate object or it could be you as a living organism. What would give you direction in a situation of a void, of an emptiness? What would give you direction?
Nothing. Nothing.
Now, something would have to come into contact with you and push against you.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, but there would, in a vacuum, there wouldn't be anything.
No.
That's what I mean.
But to gain direction and to have motion and direction, you would need some source that comes into contact, that puts you into motion. Now that point of contact and acceleration going into motion now gives you a reference frame. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you can have matter. I could encase you in a cube. I could put air in there. I could put all sorts in there. There's still no direction. Nothing has any direction until that space is now put into motion by something at that point of contact. That now dictates where your reference frame of down and up's going to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So like airplanes, for example. The runways, they are pointing in a certain direction, but without a 0 or a 180, what is 180? Is that what you're saying?
Kind of. I'm kind of struggling with your analogy there. What you have to do is we just have to agree. Okay, we're talking about a void and emptiness. Okay, so an area that's devoid of anything and it's infinite. It has no direction. Yeah. Now you're suspended in that void, right? There's no motion, you're not going anywhere, you're not going up or down, left, right, or any direction, right? What would you need to bring in order to give you direction?
Something else.
Exactly. And it would have to contact you.
Yeah. For example, right now I'm on this chair that turns around. I'm using my own feet on the ground, you know? If I didn't have that, how would you fucking turn? You couldn't,
Yeah.
It has to be my feet pushing on the ground to change, to spin the chair.
So, is the ground coming and pushing you? Is the ground in motion? Is the ground in motion? That's straight through. It's a straight line through you.
No, it's my feet using the ground to push myself.
So how would you get, even in the situation of Earth, how are you getting down and up? How are you getting direction?
Well, the thing that I'm pushing on is my reference point, I guess.
Are you pushing on it, or is it pushing on you?
I see it as I am pushing myself.
So you would then have to say that you're the source of direction for the Earth then? The Earth would have no direction unless you contacted it.
I guess so. I'm not really sure.
I think it's difficult to try and show exactly what it is I'm saying and what the implications are. I need to keep going back to it. We've got an empty void. There's nothing in this void, and I take you and I put you in that void. Okay. Now you don't have an orientation. You don't have a direction. You don't have any direction, right? You need something to come into contact with you. So if it came for the side of you and pushed you in that direction, you know, there's your reference point, so you'd need to reorientate yourself for your feet to be here. Now you have a down. If I'm outside looking at it, that could come in this way, it could be moving in that direction to my reference frame. But to you, it's that point of contact accelerating you, propelling you, which now gives you a place of direction.
So what would your answer be to the question you just asked?
Well, if people are talking about voids and we're talking about motion and direction, there has to be a source point for that. Something had to put something else into motion in order for us to have direction in the first place. So down would just be the opposer to the direction of travel.
Right. So if I'm pushing myself around, how would you explain that then?
But it's the same in that point as well. You're having to put your feet onto some contact, something else, in order to push yourself, to give yourself motion.
Yeah.
Right? To make your chair spin.
So is it then me or the ground?
The question well, this is the question. Here on Earth we have direction. We know where down is and we know where up is. So what dictates that? What is it that dictates a down and an up?
Right.
There has to be motion at play.
Yeah, right. So does that mean? I'm just trying to understand it. Does that mean that you're saying that the Earth isn't motionless?
Well, yeah. Well, the Earth could be motionless. There could be some other factor that causes an upward, like a frequency or something that denotes motion or gives direction to things.
Right.
But in the thought experiment of a void, and I take a single object, whether it be an inanimate or you as a living creature, without something else coming into your contact with you, you're never going to have direction. So in that scenario, you must have motion being created in order to create direction. You need an accelerating factor that's pushing against you that you can now reference to say, well, it's coming from there, that's down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I'm starting to grasp it, but I'm trying to then finish the contemplation, but I'm not there yet.
Well, so see, I don't have all the answers to this. It's my train of thought, and I'm just offering it up honestly to try and invite people in to add to it or question it, to play with the thought experiment and see where it goes. I've done the same with Gav, and hopefully Gav will join us soon, but he understood exactly what I was talking about, and he'll have the terminology to add to it a bit better, maybe clarify it for me, for other people. I'm just using a lack of vocabulary to try and explain it by image, but it's so difficult to portray the image of what the physical image of what I'm talking about with just words,
Yeah, but for me, I would better understand it if I saw it in front of me instead of somebody just jabbling a bunch of words.
Well, just picture, if you can slow it down and just picture it for me right now. Right, you're observing a void, an empty space, a void of any dimensions. It's nothing. It's an infinite nothingness. That there's nothing there. Now you bring in an object, okay, and it's just suspended there in the void. It has no it's no falling. It's no going anywhere, right? So what's going to put it into motion and what's going to give it a sense of direction?
Something else.
Exactly. Something else that's in motion that comes into contact with it. Or something that can give it motion.
Yeah.
So see, if I had a section of level plane and I was in a void and I hit that and put it into motion, I'm in a frictionless environment, that's now going to continue to travel. Okay? But I've left it. I've left the point of contact now. So that piece that's now in motion has no direction anymore because there's nothing to keep pushing on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. So,
but if you had other objects on that plinth that was in motion and I leave the point of contact and it was still travelling, the things on top of it now have a direction because what's underneath them is in that motion.
Yeah.
Do you know? You understand, aye?
Yeah. So, if I can jump.
Sorry, you're breaking up there, mate.
Oh, yeah, your video went to the logo for a second there. I'm not sure if it's me or you.
Yeah. Let me just check.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, mate.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm trying. I'm starting to grasp it.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that if I'm suspended in this environment
Mm-hmm.
and I can propel myself, which means that
You couldn't propel yourself though. You'd need something else to come into contact with you to propel you.
yeah, the
So,
ground, for example.
so
If I were to jump,
but you need the
uh,
ground. Aye. Yeah.
yeah, if I were to jump, I push myself up
Mm-hmm.
against the ground,
Mm-hmm.
but if that ground weren't there,
Mm-hmm.
that would not be possible.
No.
Um,
And
Obviously,
and how would you have weight? Again, if you know, in order for you to have weight, you need something else to come into contact to push against you at a set
yeah,
rate to donate. So however, hard I come in, something comes in to push against you is going to dictate the weight of you. You know,
right,
understand? So without something coming into contact with your mass has no weight.
yeah, yeah. So you're saying that if, for example, the floor is something I am capable of moving,
Mm-hmm.
then I couldn't jump. Does that make sense?
Oh.
So if I'm standing on something and I push, and
Well,
this floor,
Well,
uh,
if you were still in the void and it was a frictionless environment and you were on this floor and you jumped, okay, you would now perpetually just keep travelling, right? But once you've left that floor, okay, you now have no direction.
yeah, yeah,
You need the floor to continually push against you in order to maintain your sense of direction.
yeah. That's what I mean. So if I jump. If I push myself away from that floor,
Mm-hmm.
and that floor is I am able somehow to move
Mm-hmm.
that floor as well, then that would sort of dissipate my energy that I put in it, right?
Well, if the floor was constantly coming towards you, it would eventually meet you again, unless you could accelerate away quicker than what the floor is coming to meet you. You would have to go
Yeah.
faster than the floor is coming to contact you in order for you to maintain a set distance from it.
But have you because what I'm trying to explain is how it feels like trying to jump on a trampoline.
Mm-hmm.
Because the floor of the trampoline, the whatever it's called, for some reason, because of its flexibility, whatever, you yourself are able to make a dent in that trampoline floor,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's what I mean. So when you jump, part of energy that you put in, part of the force that you're trying to jump dissipates, if that's the right word, into the floor of the trampoline. That's the point I was trying to make.
But the trampoline's fixed onto the earth as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is stripping it right back to taking the earth away. We're in the void, and how are we ever going to gain a sense of direction? What is it that gives anything a direction? It has to be something that comes into contact with it and accelerates it and pushes and propels it. And it has to remain in contact with it or can be continually coming towards it. And the only way it's going to leave that point is if the object is moving quicker than the other part is coming towards it.
Yeah.
It's difficult because the scenarios you're giving are, real world examples of the physics of what happens here. But I'm trying to take us back to the beginning and how we would how a sense of direction would be even created in the first place.
Right. Yeah, I like the experiment. It's very back to basics, very
Hmm.
thinking about our reality and what we've been told about it.
Hmm.
I definitely like it.
Yeah. It's more aimed around about the nonsensical jargon that comes out of the heliocentrists and their
Hmm.
claims to, things in motion and direction and what donates direction, and it's all nonsense. Because if I strip it back to the bare bones in the beginning of their gibberish, what I'm saying has to be the case. You have no point of direction, you have no reference of direction unless something else comes into contact with that, which is accelerating, which you're now a resistance to that acceleration, which now is giving you weight, and you now have a sense of direction. How you doing, Gav?
Yep.
Hey, how
Hi,
you doing,
Gav.
guys?
How's it going, mate?
Hello.
I'm good, thanks. Cheers. Sorry, I thought you usually start at 1:30. That's why
Any worries.
uh,
No worries. So I've just been obviously I've gave you this scenario, Gav. I spoke to you earlier about it. So I'm just trying to put it across and what I'm trying to say, and I'm a bit stuck again for the language, and maybe you can add a bit to it because you had some clarity on what it is I was actually saying.
I can certainly give it my best shot, no doubt about that. And the one thing I like, Tell, about these conversations is that it pulls people back to, critically thinking about the first principles of things.
Yeah.
Because, that is definitely where the attention needs to be directed,
Right.
so to speak. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, what I understood from what we were discussing earlier on was, let's have the thought experiment that there is absolutely nothing. We're in an absolute void or an absolute space, and there's either an object in there or a person. If we do away with the fact that there are no visible cues or we don't have any sensory perception, and just think about things in terms of an inanimate object, then the question becomes, what defines direction, right?
Yeah.
And when I look at it mathematically, then usually what defines a direction is a coordinate system. You have to start with some kind of origin, and you have a coordinate system, and based on that, you can define what direction things are going in.
Yeah.
But then the question becomes, well, how do you define an origin? An origin, what's your point of starting?
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's where you quite correctly point out the only thing it really can be is some point of contact on the body, which is receiving some motion or some push or pressure.
Yeah.
And for me, there definitely seems to be a conundrum in there that needs to be sorted out, because we usually define motion in terms of the change of position of something.
Yeah.
So, if something changes position over time, then we accord motion to it. But at the same time, to define position, you need to have an origin and a coordinate system. So, and then you go back to the first principle and say, well, what do you choose as your origin? And that origin can really only be a point of contact, at least for this thought experiment, right? Where we're in a void and, we have no other cues. We have no visual cues. We don't have any of the organs that we usually have down here on Earth. Mm-hmm. So, as far as I can see, I think you're spot on that the only thing that could possibly define an origin and therefore define the direction in which you're getting pushed is some pressure, is some impulse, is some push, which sets things in motion. So that was kind of my understanding of the conversation. I don't know if it helps.
No,
I hope it does. Yeah.
No, that's spot on, mate.
But and I think these things are, extremely important, because the word direction in itself has so many different connotations. And if we talk about things like orientation and direction, then we really need to go to the first principles of what we're talking about. I'll give another example, and this is jumping a little bit, but there's something called the law of visible direction, written by a guy called Dr. Porterfield, who studied the workings of the eye. And what Dr. Porterfield said in his law of visible direction is that if you have an eye here, and this is the curved retina, if you like, at the back of my eye, then and light is coming from an object, then it doesn't matter how light refracts in the way to the eye. It might change direction in many things, but when it hits my eye, or the back of my retina, there's only actually one direction, and it's the normal, the perpendicular to the surface, that goes out through the center of the eye, which dictates the visible position where I see objects. And that's why sometimes objects, you know, are not where they appear to be, right? Take the example of a bent stick in water, yeah? What's happening there is that the direction of that object is dictated by the perpendicular from the back of your retina outwards. That's a well-known fact, right? The whole of optics would not work if that wasn't a known fact.
Yeah.
So when we talk about direction in terms of sensory organs down here on Earth again, and I point to you, Del, over there, right, then all you need to do is follow the straight line of my arm, and you will also come to whatever it is I was pointing to.
Yeah.
Right, so we have those notions as well of direction, and there's also the notion of orientation. That, you know, when I stand up straight and I bend my head to look down at the earth, then I know, because my head is bending, right, what's up and what's down. Yeah, just because of my physiology. So there's these aspects as well, but you know what we were talking about earlier was, you know, forget all that.
But
Let's just go from their base assumption.
Right? But even in that scenario, without the earth there, you still don't have down. You know, you doing that without a reference point means nothing. You know, it's
absolutely that only works if I'm here on Earth and I can see brown matter underneath me and blue stuff up above.
And the Earth's there to resist you. That you know, the Earth's there as your reference point. You know. So again, back to the thought experiment again. If you strip it all back, well, there has to be a point of contact. There has to be a motion set that gives direction, and the direction is denoted by that point of contact and that initial push. That's where your direction comes from.
I agree. That's the only possible scenario that would exist in terms, as far as I can see. And this is also an old philosophical problem, right? I mean, they talk about the prime mover or the unmoved mover, and you know, this goes back to whatever Aristotle and all these people when they talk about how does the whole world, you know, kick off into motion. And that's the nonsensical part of the Big Bang, right? The idea that for a start, nothing, you know, something comes from nothing, which is, you know, drivel in the first place, And then the question becomes, as you say, in an absolute space with, you know, no sense of direction, how the hell do you define direction?
And what we're
and it can only come from some point of pressure.
And what we're talking about, straight line motion, constant. You know, globes and spinny globes going in different directions don't give you that. You know, it'd be throwing you off left, right, and centre. You're never going to have that uniform, you know, straight line motion that gives you that definite down, up, left, right, and every other direction. You know, like being in the inside wall of a fairground ride. You know, that's you're not having a point of direction there, because you're constantly changing your momentum. You're not going in uniform straight line motion. That makes sense.
Yep. Although on the wall of death, you know, if you were in a car driving, then you would just appear to be driving straight, even though you're, you know, on your side going around in circles, right? For all intents and purposes, the person just needs to concentrate on keeping his wheels straight, right? To be able to maintain that.
Yeah, because the car has a propelled motion, and you being inside that reference frame, you feel the opposite of that. So you get pushed back into your seat, especially if it's accelerating, you know, which gives you your sense of direction. The car's going that way, you feel the push backwards, so you know forwards, you know backwards, you know up, down, left, right. You have to have that uniform motion, or you're not gonna get that.
No, I would agree with that. You know, I mean, any point of pressure, whether it was on my back or my front, will give me that sense of direction. And to go back to the thought experiment where we're starting from the infinite void that has nothing, then that would appear to me to be the only thing possible that would give direction to everything. Would be some pressure, some impulse, some push, if you like, to get you moving in a certain place. And then, you know, having that point of contact is the thing that gives you your origin. And if you like, the straight line, from which you can then drop a plumb. And then off you go. You've got a coordinate system.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
it's a very challenging question. It's not a trivial thing.
No.
because we get confused ourselves by our own words and the terminologies we use, and they get bandied about so easily.
Yeah.
So
and also people are referencing from real, direct life experience and stuff like that, and trying to fathom it for that. But I'm taking it in regards to their claim. This is their claims, and they're talking about voids, empty spaces, infinite empty fucking space with no direction, no orientation. So in that model, you have to bring in a factor in that's going to denote direction, and that is going to be some uniform pressure or push that's constantly, coming against it to maintain that sense of direction. You could have an initial, power surge that pushes, say the Earth's a plane, puts it into motion. Now the Earth itself has no orientation of direction in the bigger void that it's within, but us on top of that, we have the sense, because it's that's pushing against us. So we do have a sense of direction in that reference frame. But out with it could be moving anywhere. The Earth would still be orientationless, But to us on it, we would have an orientation. Hope that makes sense. But,
yeah. Is it the same with... sorry.
No, please, on you go.
Isn't it the same with the distance? Because, from distance you have to have at some point where you start, and then you go away. It must be the same thing, right?
you need.
Distance, you would need two positions, right?
You need
to measure a distance. Yeah.
You would need to bring
reference point, and then
you would need to bring the set dimensions into the scenario. So I would have to encase the whole scenario in some sort of geometric, like a box or a cube or something, and then you would know position within that point of reference. But if you don't have some sort of containment there, for us within it, then there is still no direction, there is no limitation. So if I'm even using the right words. You see, Gav?
Yeah, to be honest, it's very close to the initial problem. What creates a geometry?
Yeah.
Because a geometry, we're talking about all these things: coordinate systems, origins. What's the definition of straight and perpendicular, etc.
Yeah.
And when you think back to the Big Bang nonsense and everybody in this infinite void, then you have to ask yourself, well, where does geometry come from?
Yeah.
Right? Because again, these are the kind of definitive things that we need to get to the base of, because we know that this nonsense of Australians hanging upside down, and they can tell us, that's because we're orientationless and we don't know that. We know that's drivel, right? So we have to get to the root of these questions better to understand.
But they're saying things are orientationless, but yet they're still saying direction of down towards the centre of the mass. But again,
they're presupposing a sphere, right? Again,
but how are they getting that direction? What dictates the direction?
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Unanswered question in their model too. Yeah, so
there has to be something that resists. There has to be something that opposes, in order for you to even have a sense of direction.
Well, we talked about that before. You can't measure weight unless you're actually, physically in contact with something.
Exactly.
If you were in an elevator and the elevator snaps and you're free falling, and you were standing on a scale, it would measure nothing, right? So you need some opposing thing to be able to measure weight.
Well, in the thought experiment again, if I bring in a set of scales and you're still suspended in the void, and I just place the scales just in contact with your feet without any surge or anything, you're not going to have there's not going to be any weight measure. Your mass is not going to have a weight. What I need to do is force the scales into you and accelerate you, so that then it gets a reading.
That's correct. Yeah.
So that would mean technically that this level Earth is moving at a steady pace, at a fixed speed, right?
Well, either that, or as I say, I don't what frequencies or some sort of impulse that creates that. I mean, I'm not going to jump to the claim that the Earth is moving, but you can see why you would end up at the types of postulations, because it has to, when you start progressing with these contemplations, you're going to end up there. You can deduce that would have to be the case if we're talking about voids. Direction can only be denoted by something coming into contact and accelerating it. That's what gives you the direction.
Yeah, and there has to be an impulse against a certain surface area. Yeah. And I also wouldn't jump to the conclusion that the Earth is moving upwards. That's the old flat Earth, whatever
Well,
the Flat Earth Society.
but again,
but I can see how the equations would work,
mm-hmm.
right, from a mathematical perspective, and how that model could be, how should I say, tuned to make it possible, right?
Yeah.
But
even the statement of up, again, they would be talking from within the reference frame, but out with, that up is, we could be going laterally to an observer that's out with our reference frame. We could be doing ellipse circles, but to us within that reference frame, our down is still this direction and our up's that direction, which is,
up still needs a reference point. That's if that was,
exactly. But if we were in a contained unit, that our reference point is the Earth that is actually accelerating. Do you know what I mean? But out with it, you could be going in any direction, but that doesn't matter to us because our orientation is based on the point of contact. Does that make sense? Don't know. Yeah.
Makes sense. I think it's all worthy of further thinking, Dale, when you like to jump to any conclusion anyway. But, I think that the whole aspect of people thinking about this is one of the good things about the flat Earth in general, because you have to question your initial assumptions, your initial beliefs, the initial things that you thought to be true.
Yeah.
And it's only with that contemplation that, we will find out exactly where the bullshit is being told.
Exactly.
And hopefully find also answers to some of these questions. Yeah.
Which, you can see with the heliocentric model, they need a medium for their falling inwards, because their mass has to be in contact with something to have the effect of things falling inwards. But they're postulating bringing in other mediums now, and it's just nonsensical jargon. Doesn't make any sense to me, based on a deduction of how my actual reality is working, and deducing and getting right back to the fundamentals of their claim. It just doesn't add up, so.
And I think in the old philosophical days, they tended to think, and this was, if you like, a little bit the basis of theology. They're encased in concentric circles, right, or concentric spheres, and we're somehow inside it. And these, concentric spheres are the stars and the distant planets, in ever expanding shells. Mm-hmm. And at some point, the outside of that was the heavens where the gods lived, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
But all of these postulates, definitely require some notion of, well, where does direction come from? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Especially if you think of, something in a void. If there is an absolute space, as they tell us, then they need to postulate those things too, right? Yeah. But
the same's here. It's the same for orientation here. You still need the point of contact. You still need the base reference, even in this, our reality. Something has to be coming to meet something else in order for a pressure to be created, which denotes that's going to give you a measure of weight.
Yeah.
So something's moving. And this bullshit of us falling because we're being pulled is mystical, voodoo jargon. That just doesn't jive, So something's accelerating, something's either pushing against us, or there's some sort of frequency that denotes an upward and a downwards, which meets in the middle that gives an equilibrium. I don't know.
Yeah, and
could
again,
be anything.
Yeah, we need to be careful again about ascribing causation to effects. That is the only things that we can see. So I'm the same. Just because the effect would appear to be of falling, we can't jump to conclusions, right? Yeah. It's the same with electricity. When they talk about electricity being, or an electromotive force which causes things to move through electricity, that presupposes a geometric arrangement of wires, right? And the wires are being forced apart, for example, in a power supply, and it's that measure of how these wires move that we call force. Yeah. So we have to always be very careful about, what it is we're actually talking about and ascribing causation. But back to the original thought experiment, Dale, that's the only solution I can see as well, right? Yeah. If we're in that, absolute void, then there has to be a push of some sort, some point of contact to assign direction or to assign an origin to something.
And then if you change the medium to water, then you've got resistance to deal with there, because that point of contact is going to push you. You're now getting another pushback, which is resistance, because there's going to be a friction to the other matter that's there, So just I mean, it's just good to bring up these contemplations and open it up for other people, because it may spawn other thoughts and bring realizations to people. I don't know. I wouldn't want to think about the whole slinky affair, suspending it 2 inches above the ground, letting it go. It remains in that position until it collapses, and then it'll meet the earth. So there's implications.
The man's got a slinky.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I got a slinky.
Exactly. And I say the whole thought of this came about because of the elevator scenario, and then I went away and discovered that there's a thing called the elevator problem. I don't know if you'd have a look at it, Gav.
I haven't. No, sorry,
No.
I never had time. No.
Yeah.
But from what I remember, it's it's basically what we discussed earlier on. The acceleration upwards is where our weight will increase on the scale, and when the lift's coming to a stop, right, and it's decelerating, then that's when you will weigh less, and in between, then that's when it's at constant velocity, then that's when your weight will be the weight, your real weight, so to speak, and not your apparent weight.
But that's dictated by the speed of that point. So if the elevator was to move upwards at an increasing, acceleration, your weight would become more and more and more and more. So uniformity gives you a set, steady weight.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like the feeling in an elevator. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So when the elevator first starts to accelerate,
then you feel heavy.
Your weight increases briefly, and then you become in uniform motion. It's at a set speed, so your weight balances off. But if that elevator was to continue accelerating, your weight would increase more and more and more and more and more.
Yep.
And you feel the same thing, but in reverse when it slows.
Exactly.
No wait.
Exactly. Yeah, when it slows down and stops.
Yeah, when it slows down, you feel light again.
Feel lighter.
Yeah, and if the same is true again, if it was to come down and it was to start accelerating faster and faster, you would start to feel lighter and lighter and lighter.
Yeah, like in a roller coaster, you go down, and then for a moment you're like, "What? I don't weigh anything." That feeling.
Vomit comet, they always use a vomit comet.
Funny how falling feels like flying. That's a nice little ditty from somebody. I can't remember who it is. But
we can't say falling
unless... Btic.
The only way we can have fallen is when we've got something else that's going to resist, that's going to come into contact with us.
Yep.
If we don't have it.
Yeah, and if you don't have it, you can't have weight. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
I think there's some implications in there to that thought experiment. And obviously it tears apart a lot of the nonsensical drivel that comes out of the Globers myths in regards to motion and pulley forces and all this crap, and where they're getting a sense of direction. It's everything's to the words of centre of the sphere. How the fuck does that give direction to anything?
Well, I was to say the good thing I like, Del, is that it exercises your mental faculties. It's so easy nowadays just to ignore those kind of difficult questions and skip over them and say, what the fuck, too difficult. Yeah. And you do actually have to attend to these things, direct your focus, right?
Yeah.
Just to use these words again, very acritically, because otherwise, it's very easy to daydream and forget about these things.
Yeah.
And, so that's the thing I like, that we're exercising our faculties here.
And it's also, as I say to you earlier, Gav, initially because it's like a burden. Because you stumble across these contemplations and you go, oh fuck, now I'm going to have to focus to think about it and play scenarios out and blah 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 blah. But it's good exercise. People really need to keep that up, or else you're just going to stagnate. Nothing's going to progress. You're not going to reveal anything or break anything apart. You have to keep contemplating. And it can be uncomfortable, as you were saying earlier, Gav. The hard work aspect to it. To keep yourself focused and no run away from it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's what distinguishes people that think about it deeply. Is that you do have to continue and not give up and keep looking. And it's the same with this whole flat Earth scenario here, right? There's no way I'm going to be giving up contemplating and finding out about it. They can all go and fuck themselves if they think we're going to stop anytime soon, Del. Yeah,
exactly.
And I think that's part of the temerity and tenacity of getting in about it, and like a dog with a bone, as you say all the time, right?
Exactly.
And you have to dig deep sometimes.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying that this contemplation is, I mean, again, there's probably been lots of people over the hundreds of years there that have thought about these things, right?
Well,
But that's where the attention has to be.
Well, it's evident with things like an upward accelerating Earth. So they're saying the word upward acceleration, but just uniform motion, which is going to give you direction. Down, up. Which is only dictated by that point of contact and pressure applied. That's the only way to get it in an orientationless environment.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Yep.
So. Let me just see here. I don't know if there's anybody else that's. Hang on.
I'll be back in a second, guys. Huh?
Cool. Hang on a minute. I just need to switch that off, guys. Just 2 seconds. I've got other requests here. People want to come in and offer up. I'm just going to go to the first ones. Right. Right, Pete, she's the first one, right? So Pete's got something to offer in regards to this topic. So I'm going to ask people to, if they're coming in just for the moment, to stick to this topic. Dell greetings from the USA. Seems to me that down is physiologically a part of us living here. It just is. But something has to dictate, something has to give you that sense of direction. I've been trying to explain some of this to a friend regarding the necessity of a 3D cube or container to house the spinning cosmos, to show that relative to the globe, we are not on the down as towards the centre garbage. There must needs to be an orientation that the physical components of the universe move in. Yep. Thus being in a position to the idea that one can be on the underside of us or out sideways and still be orientated upright. Yeah, bullshit, can't have it both ways, exactly. All the best. I'm going back to listening, just wanted to throw that in and say thanks. Well, that's it. At least people are contemplating and grasping what's actually being said. Flat Earth Reset. Why do your mods block me? One day I was in there and beyond belief just goes off on me like he does many people. He doesn't like and block me. I did nothing disruptive in your chat. West Coast Wisdom was always been cool with me. In fact, was defending me when Beyond Belief went after me and blocked me. Maybe you can unblock me in my main channel, Flat Earth Reset. I'll have a look at that and I'll find out what's been going on. Thinking in terms of, this is George Anderson, thinking in terms of frequency, current would give EMF electromotive force, just a thought. Something I'll need to have a look at and think about myself. As I say, it doesn't have to be that the Earth is actually moving, that could be something like that, but it has to be a point, and it has to, have a point of reference and contact in order to give everything else direction. So, Steve, I get exactly what you're saying, no trouble, nice one, Steve. So Nellis, is that your name? Is it Nellis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you get a better grasp on what it is we're talking about now then.
Yeah, especially when you mention the thing about the scale. If the scale just touches it and it wouldn't register, that's when it clicked.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Good. So you would either have to be accelerating you towards the scale and
exactly, or the scale towards you.
Yeah, or the scale towards you. Either or. There has to be something that causes the initial impact, that gives the direction, that gives the weight. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
What's everybody else saying as well? I mean, feel free to talk about whatever. Maybe you come in here with something else you wanted to talk about as well, Nellis. So, feel free to pipe in.
Yeah. Many things, but I don't know where to start. One thing. For example. But it's just a life thing right now, because I'm trying to get my motorcycle license.
Cool.
I have already passed the first part, where the the pylons on the parking lot.
Yeah.
But over here, they are very controlling about who gets a license. So because I got diagnosed with autism at 13 years old, they somehow think that I'm a threat, and I had to get checked. I had to pay for that. I'm just waiting for a result right now. It was on the 13th of April.
Still waiting.
And still I haven't heard, and then they said, well, 95% of the people that do a test, they hear something back within 8 weeks.
Right.
So I've done the first part of my test. It went all fine. I passed. And then I have to wait, and I can't. My motorcycle is down there in the basement. I can't do shit with it. I mean, I would like to. I can. I'm perfectly capable, but it just gets you into more trouble if you do. It's so annoying.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. It's horrific. You know, I had the same problems here in the UK. You know, the system they have here is you have like people will go to a tutor. Now this tutor will take them from the very beginning through the whole progress, you know, is active with them, is watching them, you know, sees their progress, knows their flaws, knows their weaknesses, blah, 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 blah. So in my mind, you know, my rationale, it should be up to that person that decides whether they now think you're what's the word? Capable, competent, in order to be on the road with other users and blah blah. But it's not the system here. What happens is that you know, people can decide off their own back when they want to go for a test. So anybody could then apply for the test. Some guy or a woman could go for this test. The test's just designed to make you jump through these hoops. So they could show up on this day and they could fluke the test, you know. But does that mean to say they're now competent of being out on the road? You know, this person that's running the test doesn't know them from anything else. Never met them before, sees them for this wee brief period of time. They perform the tasks that are asked of them, and then they go, you've passed. But that doesn't denote then that they're now safe to be out on the road, because the person who's been tutoring them for all that time, surely they should be the ones that has the say. But
yeah, for you it's the same. You pick a driving school. Yep. It doesn't really matter. You know, you can freely choose. Yep. And then you have the person that teaches you, and then when it's time for the test, you go with him or her. You go to the place where they test you, and then somebody else that you don't know. Yeah. Just a random person can decide anything. Exactly. If they don't like your face, they say, well, fuck off, do it another time.
Exactly.
I mean, it's the same here. And I hear many stories about other people that try to get their license. And they even say that later in the day you do the test, the least likely it is that you pass. Yeah. Just, I don't know why. Not because of objective skills that you don't have or anything. You can just fail. Exactly. And sometimes it goes about really tiny, stupid things. I mean, on my driving test, I had to do a stop test. That's what they call it. It's not like a full brake test, but as quick as possible without making it too crazy test. And I needed to stop like within this bit of the pylons, and I was a little bit earlier. And then he was whining about that. I still passed, but he was still whining about it. I mean, sometimes it goes. It's just these. It's so stupid. I mean, for some reason it's really critical, and they like sometimes to be really critical to still have the feeling that they have something to say. I mean, I don't know.
We've probably got a ratio, a scale of pass-fail, you know, because it's profitable if you go and you fail once or twice, you know, because you're having to pay, you're having to cough up the the set fee for each time you do that test. So I mean, it's benefiting them if you fail, you know. And if you can't have everybody passing, because where are you going to make your revenue, you know? But at the same time, again, you know, that nerves could get the better of you. You could go up there because it's a strange person. Your nerves could get the better of you. You could make a slight mistake. That doesn't negate that you're no. That doesn't mean that you're no competent. As I say, the guy that's been with you from the very beginning, that's watched your progress, surely he's the measure of how competent you're going to be. But again, it's just this retarded system that's ass from elbow, back to front, fucking retarded nonsense. You know?
Yeah. I agree. And for example, at one point I did a test. It's called an 8. I don't know if they have it in the UK, but you need to drive an 8.
Yeah.
And I did that in second gear by mistake because it was supposed to be in first gear. And I had to do it again. And if I then fail, the whole thing would.
Well, that's because in second gear there's a risk of you losing momentum, which would then lose your direction, which would result in the bike toppling. You know, so we're back to the same principles again.
Yeah. But wouldn't it be more difficult to do it in second gear?
It would, because you're having to do it at a slow pace. And the gearing that you're in, you know, as you distribute the power, you're going to have less torque, which is going to result in less acceleration. As I say, so if you're in second gear and you may be toppling over and you don't have that throttle to pull you back up to keep the momentum going, you can topple the bike. So I can see the reasoning behind why they would maybe fail you for that kind of scenario. Because if you're trying to get on a roundabout and you're in second gear, and your balance, your weight's is tilting over, and you try and accelerate to pull the momentum back, you don't have it, you're gonna crash. So
right,
you know, so I can see the reasoning behind that. You know?
Okay. Yeah.
But that doesn't negate if you've done the figure 8 perfectly fine. You know, it should have just been a minor, you know, remark. You know, you achieved the goal. You know, but they could have just said to you as a minor, look, you know, you were in the wrong gear, and gave you the explanations for why you would need to be in the right gear.
Exactly,
But they fucking don't. You know, they're not interested in empowering you, and they probably don't even understand either. You know, but
and the boyfriend of my sister, he did a test as well, and he failed the first time because he overtook a truck and he had to exit, and he went past the truck and then to the right, but it was a little late, and then there was a car on the right side of the truck that went really fast, so he came too close to the car and he failed. So the examiner later on said that he would have rather seen him miss the exit than to take the exit in a dangerous way, which kind of makes sense, but it costs you like 400 euros, that little mistake.
Well, that's common sense, you know. I can see those aspects, you know, but the process, I just can't agree with you. As I say, for a measure of competence, it should be up to the person that's hands-on with you through that whole journey.
Right.
They surely have a better measure of your competence than somebody that's no competent showing up for a test and fluking it. You know, now you've got a danger on the road because you've got somebody that's incompetent. You know?
Yeah, and the stress involved with that, the person that takes the test, you know, I certainly experienced that. Just because of stress, you're less capable of doing the things you need to do.
If you're not relaxed, you're going to make mistakes. You know, it's the same as everything.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like a vicious circle.
It sounds to me like a reasonable way would be to have, as you say, Del, the guy who's taught you and tutored you, together with, let's say, an external source.
Yeah.
That, you know, they should both have to be agreed, because you could argue that the guy that's taught you, you know, could easily be, you know, biased.
Of course.
But I think, as you say, looking at it as a snapshot of somebody performing well in a test for 20 minutes is no real absolute indication of whether he's a safe driver or not.
Well, look at the education system. People are passing tests and they're fucking morons.
Absolutely. I was just about to say the same thing, you know. Maybe we should get them on a Mobius strip, Dell, you know. That way they would be, you know, on a non-orientable surface, you know.
Exactly.
They'd flip left to right once. But anyway, how did we get on to driving?
I don't know.
Sorry, I missed that.
Nellis was just sharing his recent experiences. We've got
All right.
Eb and Kim joined us as well.
Hey,
Hello.
how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, man, good.
I just thought I'd participate in some conversation, get warmed up. I'll be on the Non Sequitur show later tonight.
Oh, on with Sophie's wankers.
Aye.
Tell them hello from us.
Tell them they're still a bunch of fucking useless wanks. Just like I told them the last time, and tell them why the titling Objective Reality is a debate, the bunch of fucking morons that they are.
Maybe I won't go so in depth like that, but I'll tell them hi.
Hi. You can sugarcoat it if you like. I'm telling them, Steve McCreep, you're still a wee ball bag. You don't have a fucking clue. We see right
Tell
through
them
you,
the
son.
hairless monkeys on a spinning potato.
Aye. Ask them to demonstrate, you know, how you can create a gas pressure in a medium that's a vacuum, and they'll show you fireworks for 50 minutes. Then they'll shite all over the chessboard and claim victory.
Yeah.
That's the level of mentality of these clowns, so just be prepared. They're no objective either, they're totally biased. So, you know, that was the whole point of me getting on in the first place, was just to tell them that they're a bunch of fucking idiots and that I know they're biased. You know, as I say, why would these people, if they were intellectually honest, be bringing this up as some sort of debate? They're just looking for people to bring strawman cartoonery that they can try and tear strips off it to try and disguise their nonsensical jargon. You know?
So they can offer up their straw men. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yep. I have a feeling I know what I'm going into, so.
You're well prepared, are you?
I would say so. I mean, at this point, I've kind of gone beyond the flat Earth. I've kind of gone into more of Gnosticism and more of the ancient philosophy, back to the Greek philosophies of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, even more, not further back, but maybe closer in to a lot of other philosophers. And a lot of them have the same concepts that are springing back up today. And everyone's saying, hey, you know, what's all this new age mumbo jumbo? And really, it's not. It's just kind of going back to what some of these philosophers were saying a long time ago.
Yeah, I think see that language though, what moved beyond. You know, people think that in their mind like there's more or there's something more relevant. You know, I think we have to be careful when we say that, because the things that you may be involved in now, I can say, oh, I moved beyond that and I arrived here at this point. You know, in somebody's mind that means that they think I'm then saying, well, my point's more relevant than what you're looking at. And it's not the case. You know, for me, it's not all that stuff, you know, Aristotle, all these, you know, toys within the room. You know, for me, I could sift through them endlessly, you know, but I'm at that point where it's the room that I have to establish. You know, the contents of the room are here. You know, for me, it's more important that we establish the dimensions of the room. But that's just where I'm at. But when we use that language of I'm moved beyond, it's as if I've left that behind, I'm onto pastures new and more important. And that's just not the case. I think all these aspects are relevant to wherever you are. You know? Yeah,
I probably should have worded it differently. It's not like it's moving past like there's something more important.
Yeah.
It's just things that are just as important.
Exactly.
The realization that the Earth is not what the establishment and the people who in power are saying it is.
I wasn't suggesting that's where you were coming from, but that use of language, and I see it a lot. People say these things, there's more to this than just the flat earth, and they say it as if, you know, they're trying to, you know, sweep it under the carpet like it's less relevant than some other aspect. And for me, lies are lies, they're all relevant. You know, we have to uncover any assumption or any lies that are being held as true, you know? So,
yeah.
Aye. So did you hear any of the first portion of this when we were talking about?
With the directions?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for directions, we need a fixed reference point.
Yeah.
And if you're in outer space, the reference point is always going to be different. At least the outer space that is fictional.
Unless you have
science fiction.
Unless you have a constant of pressure or push that's coming into contact with you, then your reference point for down's always going to be the same.
Yeah, well, in the globe Earth model in the universe in the solar system, the Earth's rotational axis is always pointed towards the sun, and it's always spinning, rotating, and it's like how the moon always spins facing us. We never see the dark side of the moon, so it's if our north where we're on Earth isn't going to be it the entire directional system when you're in or outside of the Earth in their globe Earth space model is
Oh, you don't.
just
Oh, you don't have uniform direction with that
yes.
model. It's constantly changing.
Yeah, I mean, what they postulate is that the absolute space, that what they take to be the origin is what they call the fixed stars, which are billions or millions of light years away. But that would be, a complete perimeter, right? There's no one single point that they can refer to as their fixed origin of absolute space. All they ever do is refer to, if you like, the boundary of absolute space in all directions.
Yeah.
It's a faulty concept.
Yeah, because they don't have a boundary. They have to say it's infinite. And if they are going to suggest it's a boundary, well, what's its geometry then?
Yeah, exactly. Then we're back to that. So that's why it's all very nebulous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so far, our reference point, as far as a lot of people still use, are compasses, which still point north. But you know how they say that the magnetic North Pole keeps moving southward towards Russia? Is from our angle, the compasses would then start moving more, at least from the U.S. part, would be moving more towards the northeast, kind of more easterly if it's the magnetic North Pole is moving south. But we don't see that. We still it's not, and it's nothing that we teach our military. Our military still use compasses. Our Rangers, at least the United States, Marines, our Army, and they don't say, "Hey, this is the magnetic north that you're saying is actually off by however many degrees," and they still point it to the geographic North Pole as far as with maps, but
even at that,
they don't compensate at all for the magnetic North Pole moving at all.
Even at that, that's lateral direction, and you wouldn't even have lateral direction either with that initial, pointing back to you, that initial point of contact that's accelerating or pushing something in that point of reference. Because then you've got the down, you've got the up, and then you've got the lateral reference, which we were pointing earlier. Then you can have the plumb bob and you can have the horizontal. But without that initial reference point of contact, you're not going to have any of that. Does that make sense? Am I using the right words, Gav? You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
Good.
The words are difficult. The spoken language is how should I say, full of misconceptions and trickery. So better off we just demonstrate things practically to each other. And just on your point of navigation, obviously there's the compass, but the other concept is the celestial sphere, which again presupposes a geometrical arrangement of a sphere. So that is the backup for the military, right? When they're navigating, is to use the concept of the celestial sphere, or the stars, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
And magnetic variation is also present in aviation. Runway headings, they are corrected by usually 3 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I know.
Yeah, I don't know enough about this magnetic, how should I say, variation that they have. Whether it jumps and resets, or to be honest, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, on you go.
Oh yeah, it just keeps constantly changing, and you always have to just keep focusing on it. And the mainstream news is the only one that just kind of reports on it. It's not like anyone else is noticing this magnetic shift. There's no universities that I know of, or no private individuals that are just saying, "Hey, the magnetic North Pole is shifting." Maybe we should tell someone in government or in a university. It's always from the top down.
Yep.
I just kind of want to say hi. One thing that I wanted to ask you before, kind of, when I move on to the other show is, what happened to us? What's the end goal for the establishment? For those of us that have discovered that the Earth is not what they say it is there anything that they will do to us, or is it just right now prevent others from going down that path?
Seems like that to me. I mean, you can see the upping in the propaganda and through the mainstream media, advertising. Everywhere I go now, I switch the radio and the TV, everything's global. Globe all over globe, the global this, global radio station, bouncing globes in the background, globes in the foreground. You know, you can see that there really seems to be an effort of containment, you know.
Yeah.
But as I keep saying, for me, there's an inevitability about this. It's one of these things, you're not going to put it back in the bag. It was never in the bag in the first place. As you can see through what we can trace in history, this has always been an issue for them. You know, and what seems to be happening is, as I pointed out yesterday, I was watching some NASA bullshit of all their plans of going to the moon and this and that. What we're seeing is an influx now, all these postulations of what's going to come, but it's all coinciding with visual effect technology that's advancing at the same time. So again, people really need to be on guard and be really aware of what these fuckers are going to try and offer up. You know, so I don't know if they're going to try and go that avenue, you know, as contain it by what they show on the fucking TV screen and make it convincing. You know, as I keep saying to people, it matters not what they show me on the TV screen, it's direct reality that dictates what my objective reality is. No, this fucking image in the TV, you know. But people are so caught up in getting their information through that kind of stimulus that may have an effect. So I don't know. But you can definitely see that through the years as I've watched, they've been upping it and upping it and upping it. And anybody that's been involved in it for any period of time can see it. You know, there was a point where I thought, has it always just been there and I'm just becoming more aware of it? But there's a definite, particularly in the last kind of year, 18 months, there's been a real increase in the propaganda, the bullshit that they're putting out there. So,
Space Force and all that?
Yeah.
And debris from China shooting down satellites, hitting Spain in the space station, something like that.
Yeah. Well, as I said before, when the whole thing about the Chinese cell phone company started to rumble, I thought maybe this is
ZTE?
maybe this is their inroads into causing some sort of conflict and, you know, igniting the whole thing. But I don't know.
You mean ZTE?
What's that? I just know that was it Google, they were refusing to supply certain apps to, is it Hawaii or Huawei or whatever that tech company is.
I just know that there was a ban on CTE phones in the US. You know, it couldn't be sold. The whole fucking company just had quite a bit of trouble selling their stuff.
And then apparently in China, you know, the people of China are up in arms and they're smashing iPhones. You know, so there's a divide, a trigger point starting to happen there. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's going to be utilised, but I could definitely see a progression coming for that if that's what they wanted.
Right.
But
Abon, just is it Abon Kim? Is it your first name Kim or Abon or?
It's Abon, last name's Kim.
Sorry, Abon. Yeah. What I did see just quite recently was in America they're talking about, you know, opening up the UFO files and coming out into the open, the military and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Which again seems to me to be more to continue the propagation of the space narrative rather than any real quest for truth. But I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it. You know,
I see it too. But what do you suppose they'll do to us, the ones who are pretty much never going to go back to the globe Earth unless somehow they fly us in these shuttles to outer space and we see, hey, okay, it is globe Earth. I don't think that'll ever happen, right?
Well, as Dale said, they might have virtual shuttles, right, with the advances and, you know, augmented and reality and all these, you know, visible phenomena. They could actually put you in a container and pretend to fire you off, and if you're still gullible enough, you might actually believe you're up there. Yeah. So that is maybe a scenario. But what are they going to do with us? I think they're just going to try and continuously drown us out with drivel like the non sequitur show. I think that's a prime example of what they tried to do is continue to ridicule people asking questions, try to marginalize us in some way, or make us look foolish or stupid. So they're certainly continuing with that.
As I say, mate, it's not a reflection on you, but I just have a serious contempt for these people. As I say, they're no displaying intellectual honesty and a will to resolve. It's not an open discussion of objectivity and quantification and progress there. That's just a shit show of getting people on to perpetuate the false dichotomy, and at the same time they're making money out of it and selling fucking merchandise and all that kind of stuff, So I just have serious contempt for them. As I say, when I went on there, I just went in to display my contempt. I never went in there thinking I'm going to get a rational, reasonable discussion with objective, sceptical people. They're coming from a bias, and that's what they're representing as an already, established bias. So, just as long as people are aware, you're not going to ever get an objective discussion at them, because they're just liars, So,
yeah.
Yeah, I was naive enough to believe that we might actually get a decent discussion with these people at the time.
I wasn't.
But I know you weren't, Del, and you proved to be correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be experiencing that later tonight. Thank you for letting me on, guys.
Mm-hmm. Anytime, mate. Cool. Tell them to come here and speak to us if they want as well.
Okay.
Without their wee safety of their wee echo chamber.
Just say hello for Btic, you bunch of sofas wankers. That's all you need to say.
All right. Thank you. See you guys.
Take care, mate.
See you.
Somebody was phoning me, UK Pie or something. UK Pie. I sent you the link. You need to request a link if you want to speak to me. No fucking phone me when I'm on live.
Yeah, it was a good point you made though about discerning this. I hear that myself too often. I'm moving beyond the flat Earth, as if there was a bigger problem or a bigger question facing humanity at the moment. Which I would wholeheartedly disagree with. Yeah. And again, it's maybe just the turn of phrase and the way people say things that gives a false impression. But I'll just keep reiterating this: there is no bigger question, because this lie, this deception that's going on is absolutely the one where everybody can start to agree on the natural reality and live life and direct realism and understand, the practical, demonstrable things where we're being deceived. Yeah. And you can do it in this arena like no other. Mm-hmm. We've said this many a time. I think, any other conspiracy theory is so difficult to prove or understand or find any, real solution in it. Whereas this one, it's absolutely blatantly obvious to anybody with eyes and ears.
Exactly.
Yeah? That, there's something fucking horribly wrong.
Aye. And a lot of this stuff, people are reading literature, they're reading stories, narratives. It's all rabbit holes, and you're never going to get any closure or satisfaction, because they're out with your experience. It's all very well reading a piece of literature that's referencing some aspect that you can then go to experience yourself, and then you've got a reference to corroborate with it or a falsify or whatever. But people think they're going to find closure or realise or make a breakthrough some literature of somebody that wrote about something 500 years ago. I mean, it's just nonsensical,
No, you can only take the literature to go on, as you say, and, take what you have from it and verify it for yourself practically and demonstrably.
Yeah.
And as you say, we've sifted, I'm 54 now, Del. I've sifted through the contents of what's in the room, ad nauseum. Yeah. Up and down and left and right. I'm well read, looked at a lot of things, and there's no resolve there to be found without an exploration of the actual boundaries of where we are.
Exactly. So. I've got a wee question here for Bill. Del, to your question, I have a question. You're in a void, I also am in this void on your right side. You see me on your right, does that not give you a direction of right or left, up and down? Not only in relation to you. So in your scenario there, what if you're next to me but you're upside down? There is no set uniform direction in that void. In relation to you, I can say, okay, you're there in that position, but it's still not a direction. It's direction relative to me. you know, but there's no uniformity to it. You know, you and I don't agree that there's up, down, left, and right, because you could be upside down in that void. You know, so you know,
That's right. There's only relativity and no absolute direction in that scenario.
What would have to happen is you'd have to come into a point of contact with me and propel me in a set direction. Then I would have a direction, you know, relative to that point that you're contacting me, which I would now denote as my down. You know, so.
Yep.
And my resistance to you, well, there's no resistance because it's a frictionless environment. But for the opposite was true, and I came to you, you would now have a fixed reference point of a uniform down and up, because up's the opposite of that interaction of you. You know, that momentum, that push, that pressure. So.
Yep. And again, I think we need to also distinguish in those thought experiments between, you know, a visible sensation and a purely tangible one as well. Because, you know, if you have your eyes shut, then, you know, what Bill's saying wouldn't apply, right?
Yeah.
You know, so you can only go from some pressure that you feel, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So in regards to motion, Bill, and these claims about motion and motion in a direction, you know, that's what we're talking about. That's the issues. So where are they getting these? What would you need and require in a situation of a void, of nothingness? You know, so you have to have something contacting something else with momentum that keeps pushing on it to give you a uniform set direction. Without that, you're just back to orientationless. So say I could, you know, fire you a cannon theoretically in that void, and you're in motion, but without something else to reference, you don't have a direction. You can't point to up, down, left and right because it's orientationless. You need some other factor in there of contact in order to give you a reference point for direction. Well, that makes sense. Right. So anyway, guys, I don't know if anybody else is, you know, here's got anything else to discuss. I just plan to have this as a wee short one this evening. Gav, I don't even know if you're away for the computer right now. But, Nellis, if there's anything else you want to bring up, by all means, let's hear it. If not, I'm just going to switch it off and leave this for, you know, people to ponder, and probably maybe come back on in the next day or two, and open back up again and see what people have got to say in regards to the matter. So I'm also going to have to read out comments and some emails that I'm getting from people, so I will probably, again, back to Pishenden tomorrow. Pishenden for 3 weeks, Pishenden for another 2 weeks. It's fuck all else today, but, you know, I'm going to read comments out and take the piss out the globe.
Yeah, absolutely. You're knocking it on the head, right?
Well, unless, of course, there's something that you want to discuss or bring up. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, I just got interrupted there. There's still people who think I want to go out on a Saturday night and drink beer and talk shite. Yeah. And they still haven't realised that that's not what I want to do on a Saturday night, Tell. I'd much rather come here and talk and discuss things and try and further my understanding.
Talk about where we get direction to.
yeah, anything than just talk nonsense. So.
Exactly. Aye, I mean, I'm only...
Anyway, should we revisit this subject? I think it's a complex one to get your head around at the beginning,
Yeah.
And it's not a trivial, you know, thought experiment at all.
No.
As I say, I can only reiterate the way I see it, that, you know, to define some kind of coordinate system and some kind of origin in a void where there is absolutely no notion of direction or orientation, then you would have the points of pressure or the point of contact and some motive, you know, how should I say, force, again, I'm going to use that word carefully, would be the defining point, right? So, or the defining notion. So,
yeah, exactly.
But,
so.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully people have grasped the bones of it and we can extrapolate on it. Obviously, it's still fresh to me as well, so things that have to be contemplated. And again, if anybody out there's got anything they want to add to it or bring in or question aspects of it, by all means, you know, let's hear it. You know, so again, I'm not making any claims to anything. We just make that clear. We're talking about the claims that have been postulated to us and the absurdities and the factors that would have to be there in order for it to be the case. You know, in regards to an orientationless void You know, there has to be something brought in to dictate direction. So I don't see any way to escape that.
Yep. No, we're back to the prime mover.
Exactly.
But anyway, I'm going to take my dog out for a walk. Thanks, Dale. It's been good as always. Huh? It's always good to have discussion and not debates.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
I hope Mr. Ebon Kim does all right on there.
Aye.
And I'll see you all soon.
Cheers, my man.
Cheers.
Cheers, my man.
Yeah. See you later, Nellis. Cheers, bud. All the best with your bike stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care, mate.
Cheers.
See you later.
Right.
Right. What was I reading there, Mass? But the scientific concept for the substance of which all physical objects consist, see matter. For the main service and some. That's the wrong mass. Mass is both a property of a physical body and a measure of its resistance to acceleration. So, mass has weight, something's accelerating, and it's certainly no mystical, magical, voodoo pulley forces. So, as I say, we'll bring it back up and open up again for people to join in the conversation. So, cheers, mods, always appreciated, and everybody that came on this evening. I will see you all very, very soon. Take care.